Hey guys, welcome to Trade Genius Podcast. Philip and Bob here as usual. We got an early one for you today because we're going to come back later at the FOMC announcement just before at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go live. So make sure you hit your notification bell, subscribe, and we're going to come back live and walk you guys through the announcements. We'll talk about what the tone is from the announcement, whether they're hawkish or dovish, because that has implications going forward with market direction. And you guys can see how we interpret the price action as it develops after that. So look forward to that in a few hours. So without further ado, we're going to cover the CPI report that came out a little less than what was expected. What does that mean? And also crypto, we got SBF is arrested in the Bahamas and looks like the US is going to get him extradited. So we're going to talk about the ramifications of that as well. So let's dive in.
Trade Junior.
All right, so Bob, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried finally got arrested, probably so he could avoid testifying in front of Congress. But basically he's at the court in the Bahamas and trying to fight his extradition, and they're still deciding whether or not he's going to get bail or not. But it sounds like the U.S. is going to call in a favor, and he's going to be brought back. And from what I saw, I mean, we could sit here all night and talk about this, but from what I saw, basically every regulatory agency in the U.S. that deals with financial crimes is filing charges. So it looks like he's going to have a long road ahead of him.
Yeah, today Congress had hearings on FTX by the, I guess, the caretaker of the company to try to unwind things. And so I think the heat was too hot for him to be sitting there free in the Bahamas in his mansion with his parents, while the rest of the world gets exposed to his crime. So I think they called in a favor to get him arrested in the Bahamas. I'm of two minds with this. Could be the start of the process, or it could be, we'll just keep him tied up in the Bahamian courts for, 10 years until everybody forgets about the guy. And then Biden goes ahead and on his way out the door, pardons the guy, so until he sits in a U.S. federal prison, I'm not holding my hopes out yet, but I'm kind of glad that fraud charges are being put forth, because that is the process in which you can go ahead and start clawing back money from everybody in the world who took money from this guy, including politicians in the United States and celebrities who took endorsement money, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and prosecutors, I don't know if it was the Southern District of New York, but basically said that they're also going after or charging him with illegal campaign contributions, which I thought was very interesting. And how that unravels will be quite telling, I think, in the weeks to come, because that was something that they hadn't really talked about. And everybody was kind of sitting around going like, well, is that how it works? You just, send everybody tens of millions of dollars and not get arrested. And so he's gotten arrested. They are bringing up the illegal campaign contributions. And so where that goes, I don't know if you have any theories on that, but I thought that was very interesting that they brought that up, that is going to be scrutinized.
Yeah, look, I mean, some politicians already gave money to charity, but that's not going to fly. So once fraud charges have been put forth, they're going to have to disgorge that money back to the creditors. And, the government's going to probably try to take their pound of flesh, because they see a honeypot here of money laying around. So I'm sure there's going to be fines to go around. I'm not sure yet who's dirty on this thing, but somebody in our trading room brought up something interesting. He said, "Hey, this guy may flip, right. and start naming names and naming processes and maybe uncovering even more things than we've known before." So I think it's fair to say that this is the final nail in the coffin of what I would call offshore crypto exchanges, at least as it pertains to the Western world.
Yep. And even today, Binance was getting a bit of a run. I think it's still happening on withdrawals. I think it hit $2 billion last I checked. And, that's ultimately the test of any exchange, is whether or not everyone can withdraw in mass and their funds. I mean, they should. Every single one of your customers down to the last one should all be able to withdraw, and you have no customer deposits, and you can go to work the next day honky dory. Like, that's how it's supposed to work. But inevitably, every single one of these exchanges that gets a customer run ends up unable to process withdrawals, and then the whole Ponzi falls apart. So We'll see how Binance unfolds too, to that point about overseas exchanges. I know that doesn't really affect most people in the US unless you're with Binance.us. If you are, keep an eye on the situation. Unless you're actively trading, probably not a good idea to be on there. But it sounds like there's also some rumors that there might be some charges coming as they're under investigations for, I don't know which regulatory agency is investigating, but there may be something coming up this week that pops up in the headlines. So anyway, some of the bigger institutional players that deal with them, I know, are withdrawing funds, and the BUSD, their stablecoin, has taken quite a significant hit in its market cap today too. So, and that's the kind of stuff you want to keep an eye on, where the token starts to lose value and whether these stablecoins depeg. That can create a lot of issues in the ecosystem. So keep an eye on Binance too as things unravel here. Switching gears, today we had the CPI report. Now, Bob, it came in a little under expectations. What were your thoughts on the number? I think they were expecting 7.3. We got 7.1, I believe it was. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, so I thought the CPI report was pretty close. It's so funny, 1/10, 2/10. What's the big deal with those things? But everything is so much leverage is in the system right now that you just get these either springs or elevator rides down. And this morning, we had an absolutely insane move higher. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a 90 or 100 point ES move within 1 minute. And I mean, it blew the price sky high. And if you can look on the far right of the chart that Phil just put up there, you see that big wick with that candle. Guys, that's the middle finger of death for the market. So that is saying that there were no buyers left up there. There were only people that had stops that got crushed, and it brought it back down. And if you notice the blue line, this is my chart. Phil has his filled in. I don't have mine filled in. Is that blue line is the fair value. I mean, not fair value. That's the
liquidity. The
liquidity number, and you could see that liquidity is still struggling here, and price likes to touch that. And so, we will trend down, or we will dump down to that price, and then we'll see where things go. And that bottom line there is kind of my, or that's our heat index. I like to superimpose it on the Phil's chart to kind of get a double look, and the heat is getting overbought too. And that's one of our indicators. When you see that magenta color and that magenta starts to give way, where it looks like those blobs there, that's coming out of overbought. We're pushing into overbought right now on that move. It'll probably have follow through tomorrow, and we're showing this actually this morning. So we're a couple hours ahead of the Fed meeting. So what we see now is that everything's been priced to perfection into this Fed meeting and this CPI report. And here's the thing that people don't get, Phil, is that oil moved up with this move, okay? And so inflation's not out of the woods. And I think we're going to see in a couple hours that, Colin Powell's say different crook for a different time. Jerome Powell is going to probably say, until I start seeing CPI prints under 2%, I'm going to keep raising interest rates. And I think people aren't quite getting that. And I mean, the cost of capital is becoming prohibitive for companies. It's going from painful to severe in terms of what it's going to cost people to borrow money for expansion or for lines of credit or to keep a business afloat. And they're going to have to dilute shares, at very unfortunate prices to be able to stay in the game. So it's really interesting to me. I'll throw it over to you to get your thoughts, and then I'll add a few more thoughts on top of that.
I think the CPI number, obviously there was the initial rejoicing that it was coming under expectations. I think there was a ton of protection in case it came in hot. And so we saw the initial algo reaction pre-market. And then as that protection was taken off, the dealers had to hedge back down, and we got this Eiffel Tower, as you say. That candle, we call it either an inverted hammer, or you can call it a bearish pin bar. But in any case, that's not a bullish candle, especially on the daily chart. And that's more than likely going to see some more follow through to the downside. Now, obviously, we are going into our FOMC announcement in a little while here this afternoon, which, by the way, we will come back to you live on. on that. And so we'll talk you guys through that. So check back in on the channel when you get that live make sure you have the notifications on, so when we go live, you'll get the alert. But come back here and we'll walk you through the announcement and what that means. I think ultimately they're expecting 50 basis points. I think that's probably what we'll get. I think he's going to maintain his hawkish stance, because at the end of the day, even though it's 7.1% inflation year over year, that's far too high, right? I mean, they have not wavered in the fact that they want it back down to 2%. So if that's the case, you're going to hear that from him later today, and you're going to hear him basically say that that's the target. They have to maintain their hawkish stance all through 2023. So I think this is where we see we showed you guys last week the 40-day cycle. We showed you guys liquidity being pulled out, and I think it's going to give us more downside as a result. So yeah, so that's my take on it. I think, knee-jerk reaction by the market, but ultimately I think we're rolling back over in a bear market rally. We hit the 50 weekly on the futures on that announcement too, which is a key level in bear markets. We didn't quite get there on the spot SPX index, but we got close. And that's usually where bear market rallies die. So for me, it looks like a great spot to hedge and get short. And we're probably going to be making new lows as we get into Q1.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is that healthcare came in soft because of the way they calculate these things. It's coming off some of the pandemic spending. So there's some misleading numbers that there always is in these reports that aren't quite that don't quite make sense, and so they're gonna have a hard time driving this thing down if they can't get oil. Look, oil needs to get sub 60 for, I think, Powell to relent. But make no mistake, folks, he's not as interested in inflation as he interested in the dollar stability or strength. Remember, he's fighting countries that want to decouple from the dollar and start their own rival reserve currency. And America is going to make that as difficult and painful as possible for China and Russia and India and Brazil and all the other Klingons to that to see that become a reality. And so I think we're going to keep pressing on no matter how painful this gets. And because employment is something that is not like in the past, then I think he has a lot of runway to raise interest rates before he affects employment. So it's going to be an interesting ride. And that's why I'm speaking for you, Phil. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we both are going into 2023 bearish. Because I don't think we've seen actually the other side of the roller coaster ride, because they keep buying the dips, and I think he has to break that mentality.
Yeah, and like we talked about, the pivot, when it does come, it will come. It's not going to be bullish, even though that's what the headlines have you believing, right? That we're going to, the Fed's going to pause or they're going to pivot, and that's historically where the final pain comes in the next few months. 4, 5, 6 months after that is where we finally start to bottom out. So yeah, I think he's going to just come in swinging, and the market's going to keep on going down until he's satisfied with inflation. I think it's pretty much that simple. It's going to affect all of our risk on assets, all, real estate, all of that stuff into 2023. So I think the worst thing you can do is get bullish here. I think you're buying the top of the move. And there are some people that think that we have a new bull market on our hands. And if you look at what we're showing you guys, nothing tells you that. So, yeah.
No, and the other thing too is, look what happened to Coinbase and Silvergate and Mara. This market skyrocketed, and those guys all went red. So, we're not in a new bull market, and you can just see, I have to check when Enron blew up, but usually when these companies start blowing up, it's on the front end of a major bear or a major recession, because basically the liquidity is pulling out. There's not enough dumb money to keep filling the coffers for people that want to redeem. So I think I think phase 3 is ready to go, Phil.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, well, that's going to do it. I just want to give you guys our take on kind of the updates that happened in the last 24 hours in the market, and the CPI and crypto with the SBF and the hearings and all of that. We will be back in a few hours. I think we'll probably kick off the live stream at 1:55 or something like that right before the announcement, and we'll bark off the headlines that are coming out and kind of walk you guys through what we see on the price action. And I thought we'd give you guys a little sneak peek at how we look at those announcements and how you interpret kind of the craziness that ensues. So we'll see you in a few hours. Thanks again for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.